There is a kind of power that doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't need applause. And yet, when it enters the room, everything changes. People quiet down. They listen. They follow. That power is silence. Not the absence of noise, but the presence of something deeper. Conviction, clarity, inner command. In a world that celebrates volume, the Stoic seeks presence, because the loudest person in the room is often the weakest. The illusion of noise. We've been taught that to lead, you have to speak, to argue, to convince, to assert your point. But what if that's a trap? Epictetus warned, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because chasing approval makes you predictable. It means your mood depends on how others respond. It means you speak not to share truth, but to secure your place. The Stoic rejects this. He doesn't shout over the world. He withdraws, listens, and when he speaks, it matters. Second, stillness is authority. Imagine a battlefield. Chaos everywhere. Voices shouting commands, boots slamming into the earth, smoke rising from the ground. And then, one man stands still. No shouting, no visible tension. Just a calm, steady presence. Eyes clear, breath even, body grounded. And what happens? People start looking toward him, not because he demanded attention, but because he refused to lose himself in the noise. This is the paradox of stillness. It does not reach outward, yet it draws everything in. Seneca once wrote, "The greatest empire is to be emperor of oneself." He wasn't speaking in metaphors. He meant it quite literally. Your emotions, your reactions, your need to be heard, if they rule over you, no external power can save you. But if you rule over them, you walk through the world like a sovereign. In today's world, we equate power with posture, loud voices, fast talkers, those who always have a rebuttal. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. True authority is not how many words you say. It's how many you don't need to say. Think of the sea. It doesn't need permission to exist. It doesn't explain its depth. It doesn't advertise its strength. It simply is. And in its silence, it holds immeasurable power. The Stoic doesn't chase control. He becomes immovable, not through resistance, but through rootedness. When you stand firm in yourself, you don't have to compete for space. You become the space. Stillness creates gravity. Others orbit around it. Not because you pushed, but because you refuse to be pulled. There's a kind of quiet that unsettles people, not because it's aggressive, but because it reveals their own noise. That's the kind of presence the Stoic cultivates. A calm that exposes frenzy, a clarity that breaks through confusion, a self-possession that draws respect without request. So next time you're tempted to interrupt, to prove you're right, to win the moment, pause. Let the silence speak for you. It says more than you ever could. Third, power is energy conserved. There's a reason the lion doesn't roar all day. It doesn't need to. Its power is not in how loud it is, but in how little it has to prove. The lion is feared not because it makes noise, but because everyone knows. If it moves, something happens. The same is true for us. But too often we waste our energy trying to be heard, trying to react to every slight, trying to have the last word. We mistake movement for momentum. But the Stoic knows, energy, when conserved, becomes power. Power, when contained, becomes presence. And presence, true presence, is unmistakable. Marcus Aurelius put it simply, be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands, unmoved. What does that mean? It means, don't flinch. Don't get pulled into every conflict. Don't dissipate your energy chasing petty wins. Be the rock. Let the waves crash. Let the noise rise and fall. Let the insults pass like wind through the trees. When you save your energy, you gain something most people never touch: clarity. Because a mind that's constantly reacting has no space to reflect. But a mind that's calm, a mind that doesn't flinch at every jab, is a mind that sees clearly, acts precisely, and speaks rarely. This is why the Stoics practiced temperance, not just in food or comfort, but in conversation, in emotion, in judgment. They weren't distant because they didn't care. They were reserved because they cared about the right things. And in that restraint, they became powerful. Imagine being in a room where someone insults you, your name, your ideas, your values. Most people lash out. They argue, defend, raise their voice. But the Stoic? He looks, he listens. And unless it's truly worth responding, he remains quiet. Not because he's weak, but because he knows. Some battles are won by walking away. Some arguments dissolve in the presence of dignity. And some people can't hear you anyway, until your silence echoes louder than your words. This is the economy of the wise. They don't spend themselves freely. They invest their attention like gold. They speak only when speech adds value. Everything else is discipline. So ask yourself, do you want to be heard in the moment, or do you want to be remembered in silence? Because power doesn't always enter with a bang. Sometimes it enters quietly and never leaves. The fourth silent discipline. Practicing this kind of presence isn't natural. We're wired to react, to fill silence with words, to chase validation like oxygen. But the Stoic builds discipline like a muscle. Here's how. The pause. Before you speak, breathe. Not to suppress your words, but to choose them. The scan. Ask, is what I'm about to say useful, or is it ego? The edge. Speak less than you want to. Leave silence as part of the message, because silence, when intentional, carries weight. It creates space for others to adjust. It breaks patterns. It demands attention, not through aggression, but through gravity. V. When you stop performing. Something shifts when you stop performing. When you no longer speak to be seen, but to share something that matters. People feel it. You're no longer just a voice in the crowd. You're the one they look to when things go sideways. You're the one who keeps his head when everyone else is drowning in noise. That doesn't come from charisma. It comes from character. 6. A modern application. Let me give you a real example. You're in a team meeting. Tension is high. Everyone is trying to look smart to be right. And then there's you. You listen. You say only what's essential. And when challenged, you don't flinch. You don't explain yourself to be liked. And the moment passes, but you remain in people's minds. Not as the loudest, but as the most grounded. The 7th Stoic ritual of presence. Try this today. Pick one conversation, and in it, do 3 things. Listen fully before you speak. Pause deliberately before your first words. Say 20% less than you think you need to. Don't worry about how it lands. Worry about staying anchored. The rest will take care of itself. 8. The final thought. Respect isn't something you demand. It's something you embody. And the silent force that commands it doesn't come from your voice. It comes from your presence. The Stoics knew this. They built their lives around it. In battle, in politics, in private struggle, they let the storm rage around them and stood, unmoved. So the next time you're tempted to raise your voice, to over-explain, to prove your worth, pause and remember, a calm mind is louder than any roar.